Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns.
Hello and welcome to Keto Life Support. This is episode 114. Today I've got a really fabulous chat with my good friend who you might know from social media as AD Keto, but his name is Aaron and he is awesome. I met him several years ago and we just have a mutual admiration. And I heard him talking about, what it's like being more than 5 years or so keto. And I thought, well, that would be really fun to just have a friendly chat about what it's like now that we're both have been keto for more than 5 years and how it's different and how we've shifted. And mostly it was just a catch up. And so you are a fly on the wall for the catch up, for the catching up, not like the red sauce. And enjoy. All right, I'm super happy to welcome Aaron of AD Keto to my world. Hey, Aaron, how's it going?
Hey, Kim, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good other than melting in the heat.
I can imagine. I mean, you're West Coast, so, it's a little bit different. I would imagine it's hot here, but we're used to the seasons. So hot is hot only for a little while. And then, we get all four here. I know it's different for you.
Yeah. Well, I'm in the Bay Area, which is Northern California, and we're total weather wimps. Like there's like a 20 degree variation in the weather here, like ever. But on a hot day, there's no air conditioning. So you get to melt.
There you go.
Anyway, but enough about me. We met at Ketocon some year.
3 years ago.
3 years ago, maybe. Okay.
Yeah.
And we were like, hey, I like you. And you're like, hey, I like you. And so we hit it off.
Yeah.
It was good. Good.
Good times.
Good times indeed. So tell me, and the people, who are you if they don't know?
My name is Aaron Dupree. I started keto about 5.5 years ago, January of 2017. I was one of those people who I know, like you, was told that low fat was the way to go, eat less, exercise more. That's the key. I struggled with my weight for a long time. I was, an athlete in high school, but when I went to college and discovered beer and pizza, things, kind of got off the rails, and I yo-yoed with my weight for a couple decades. I'd have periods of my life where I would gain a lot of weight and say, oh, I better kind of dial things in. And I would try the flavor of the week diet, whatever that happened to be, and have some success, but was never really able to maintain it long-term until I started keto in 2017. And I immediately knew that something was different about it. I felt different than I ever had before. And I felt like this is something I could kind of do long-term. I didn't feel that sort of, I didn't feel I was unsustainable like all these other things I had tried. So I've been doing it for 5.5 years. I lost about initially 75 to 80 pounds. That's kind of from my highest to my lowest. If I did that math now, the difference is like maybe 50 pounds. But I have been intentionally putting on weight over the last 6 months or so for the first time, which is a weird mindset thing, something I had never done before. It's always sort of been weight loss, weight loss, weight loss.
Right.
And now several years in, things have shifted for me a little bit, and it's not so much about that anymore. So that's kind of my story. I've started up a YouTube channel about it, got my Instagram account about it, and that's my story.
All right. When you started your Instagram, because you've got a popular Instagram channel, we'll put the links for people in the notes. What was behind that? What did you want to put out? What was the trajectory?
Sure. It was this kind of thing where I feel different than I ever have before. And I know that there are people who have kind of struggled with this the same way I have, yo-yo dieting, basically. And I was like, well, if this has worked so well for me, I could just kind of document. Sadly, I started the channel after I had lost most of the weight. So it wasn't like, here's this miraculous transformation on camera that you can all watch. It's sort of like after the fact, which was a little bit of a bummer. I just kind of talked about my story. I did some recipes, which I was really gung-ho about in the beginning, but that sort of I fell off with those because they just required a lot of work to put together. Unless I had like a free weekend, it was like, I don't know that I have the energy to put a recipe together this weekend. But after a few years of doing that, my wife got on board for a little while and we did a weekly check-in for her. She lost almost 100 pounds doing keto. And we're both sort of more low carb these days, much less militant with the foods we eat. We've kind of been sustaining this way of eating for going on 6 years now. And so my kids are sort of the last final frontier. They're all still carb hounds and it's fine. You know, I have 20-year-old twin boys. And I got a 16-year-old daughter whose metabolisms are all racing and they're fine. And they have no really metabolic issues to speak of. But they know that if they ever run into trouble, they have a decent resource to go to, I hope. It was cool to sort of finally get my wife on board after, about a year. It was sort of like, she saw me kind of lose the weight. She saw me kind of sticking to it. She had done Weight Watchers for a long time and had success on and off. But it was another thing where, Weight Watchers wouldn't exist if people kind of stuck with it and had the success that they wanted. So she decided to try keto and it worked for her as well. So we've recently gotten far less strict with things. And I know that that's something that you and I share as well. Like last week I had, for the first time in I think 5 years, I ate a full-on burrito from Chipotle.
Was there rice even in the burrito?
There was brown rice. There was black beans. It was the burrito I used to get when I was a fatty.
Wow.
But it was glorious. It was, I hadn't had one in forever and it was great. And it fit within what I was doing for the day. I still do track my food. I track my calories. And even though the macros were way out of whack that day, that burrito fit into what I was doing calorically. So it worked for me. So, but we do have days where we say, you know what, today we're going to deviate. And that's kind of the big thing. We used to consider those days sort of cheats, and we don't even use the word cheat anymore. Like we've started using this term that my friend Samantha coined. I think she coined it, planned deviation. And I've told people, whenever people ask me about cheat days, I say, I don't call them cheat days. I call them planned deviations, because just psychologically, it feels different when because the word cheat implies that you're doing something wrong or that you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. Right. But if it's part of a plan and you're just deviating from what you normally do, you're still in control. You're not controlling, the food's not controlling you, you're controlling the food. It's just sort of empowering. So I always use those words, planned deviation. And I
like that.
I always used to use cheat, and planned deviation is definitely the way to go for me.
Yeah, I don't use the word cheat because I agree. I think we're the same sort of underlying, well, that's not quite right. Because cheat either means you're trying to get away with something, and you can't get away. You're there. There's no one to fool or to get an unfair advantage. And what people usually do to cheat does not give you any advantages. Although you could say that by thinking of it as the deviation, I call it an alternative choice, just something different. It's a choice, not a cheat.
Yeah.
That gives you the advantage. The thinking of it as flexibility rather than
getting away with something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So same page. Yeah. I was really steadily keto for quite a while. I was very strict with my carbs, and I am really glad I did that. I am glad I did total carbs, very strict, tracking on it. I am glad I had that period in my life. It taught me a lot about, I think the word might be intentional control, right? Being intentional about my food. And then there was a point at which I realized it no longer seemed necessary. Was your transition from because I think you were similar, pretty hardcore keto, to more of a low carb, flexible approach. Was it a gradual, or was there a moment you changed?
There was definitely a moment. And I think a lot of people, when they start, they say it's kind of like a game you play. I didn't know what macros were when I started. I didn't know, I knew potatoes were carbs. That's kind of all I knew. I had no idea what nutrition was. I would just put stuff in my mouth if it tasted good. Right. And I didn't really think twice about it. So there was a little bit of learning when I started. I was like, oh, okay, carbs are these things. But if I have this, I can do net carbs. Again, it was sort of this how do I get away with eating the things I want to eat? And that served me really well. Like I ate a pint of ice cream every night, like keto ice cream, and the weight just kind of dropped off. And I was like, oh, okay, I can still have these things that are unbelievably delicious and the weight's coming off. Cool. I'll keep doing this net carb thing for as long as I need to. But eventually I started to kind of feel not so great when I ate those things. Like once the weight, I think that served me really well in the beginning. When I needed to drop the weight, it was a way for me to stick with it. It was a way for me to hit the goals I wanted to hit. But after a certain point, those foods didn't make me feel good. And the moment I started working with a coach, John Shane, whose handle is the Keto Road on Instagram, he and I are good pals.
He's been on the show once. Yeah,
he's a good dude. He and I started working together in 2018. And one of the scariest things I ever heard anyone say to me was, we're going to switch you to total carbs. You're going to have 10 total carbs a day. And I was like, what do you, huh?
10,
Wait,
that's a tough one.
No more ice cream, like no more like keto treats. He's like, no, we're going to go total carbs and see how you do. And honestly, it was that period of going from net carbs to total carbs. I kind of likened to the difference between like standard American diet and keto. It was that big a difference for me. I felt better, I think, than I ever have. I got down to, because it wasn't just cutting out the net carbs. He put me on this bodybuilder's protocol, even though I wasn't a bodybuilder. Because when I started and lost the weight, it was like, okay, I'm going to chop off my calories to 1,700, like a stair step, and just start eating 1,700 calories.
Okay.
And he was like, no. Let's try this thing. Where are you right now? What are you eating? I was like, I don't know, about 2,200, 2,300 calories a day. He said, okay, we're going to gradually step you down week by week. We're going to like reduce your calories by 100, 150 calories every week, gradually over the course of 3 months. And I was like, why? And he was like, well, it's going to give your body time to, you're going to basically confuse your body, and it's going to be looking for this equilibrium that you're constantly changing. And in so doing, I got down to like the lowest weight I've been in my entire life. Like for the first time since high school, I weighed less than 200 pounds. And I don't think that would be sustainable for me at all. However, that was the leanest I've ever been. And then he introduced me to this concept of reverse dieting, which I was like, what in the hell are you talking about? I don't understand those words together. What is a reverse diet? And he was like, well, the thing you just did, stepping it back down, we're going to do the same thing, going back up the other way over the course of 3 months, gradually step those calories back up over the course of 3 months. And I was like, why? He said, well, it'll keep you from, a lot of excess fat regain. If we do it this way, it'll give your body, again, something to chase as you go up. And then once you get back to where you are, if you want to, you can do another round of this cut and reverse thing. I was like, okay, I guess I'll do that. And so I did it for 3 months and gained very little of the weight back, gained very little of the fat back. And I was like, okay, well, if I don't know that I'll do this again, but it's good to have done it. It's good to know that this is something I can do. Honestly, the bottom of that kind of cut was horrible. I was not nice. I did not feel like I was a pleasant person to be around, but it gave me, I felt the best I'd ever had physically. So now I'm whenever I feel like I'm a little fluffy or anything, I was like, okay, I'm going to do my own cut without the guidance of a coach and just sort of see how I do. So I've done that a couple of times, not as drastically as the one I did initially with John, but I'm in the middle of one right now. Actually, I'm starting to cut my calories down in a similar way, not quite as drastically as I did that first time, but it's something I like to do from time to time. And it's just nice to have that knowledge and know that I can do that kind of thing. So that was the moment, that moment of working with him, going from net carbs to total carbs. And I still track total carbs. I eat way more total carbs than people would kind of consider keto, but I think I'd rather eat like 50, 60 total carbs than, 20 net carbs, but 120 total carbs.
The problem with the net carbs is it's sort of like a black hole.
It is.
You're like, I am thinking it's because, the research seems to show that, it might be that erythritol doesn't count in your body, but this other type of fiber, we count like 3 of the 4 calories. It's like, well, crazy. Which one is it? Might as well count them all.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's yielded the best results for me, is counting them all. The big thing recently, the big question, I'm curious how you handle allulose and what your thoughts are on allulose. Like that's sort of the new kid on the block. That's sort of, because technically it is a sugar. Technically those are total carbs, but I know that there's a zero glycemic impact. I've worn a CGM and I've had like allulose based treats before and like nothing has happened. So what are your thoughts on allulose?
Yeah, the first like 6 months I knew about allulose, I was like, I'm skeptical.
I was it seems so sus.
Skeptical, total sus. But at this point, I kind of treat it like erythritol. I'm like, it's in that camp for me where, yeah, there are just some random genetic people out there who have something where erythritol raises their blood sugar, but, you would have to search pretty hard to find them. It's a very small number of people, but you never say never, but right. I can say not usually. And so I put allulose and erythritol, I put in the same sort of unlikely to be absorbed in any great amount category.
Right. Yeah. It's when we do have sweets, we try to get allulose based stuff. My wife doesn't do well with erythritol. Honestly, I don't have a huge problem with that. I don't like the cooling effect that you can get.
Yeah, that can be intense.
But she not only has that, she has like sort of intestinal stuff that happens. So allulose doesn't seem to bother her at all. So we're sort of like accepting of allulose more so than we used to be. I was curious, did you have a moment like that where you sort of like switched from, like, what was the moment where you went sort of like
what
hardcore?
Happened for me was actually, I think you alluded to this, which is keto was really the first time. I mean, maybe I got into nutrition in weird ways before, but it was the first time I actually was like, I'm going to figure this out. So like I went keto, I kind of followed rules for a while. And then I was like, well, I kind of want to understand what's behind what I'm doing, and got really into the science of it. And then actually from there, got into the science of just general nutrition, not just keto, but understanding what does food do and how does it interact with our body? And, what is a metabolism? Because I used to only think of it as something that hated me, right? And so I got really into it. And one of the things that ended up happening was I stalled on keto. So early-ish in my first 2 years, I stalled and I was stuck and just stuck. And so some of my exploration was really born of my desperation to not remain a 200-pound woman, and to lose more weight. And while I wouldn't have given back what I'd gotten from keto, I wasn't willing to hold on to some dogma about how I was supposed to eat in violation of my other goals, right? And that felt stupid if I did that. So what ended up happening was I really went down the calorie rabbit hole, really learned a lot more about energy, and I got to a place where I actually realized a couple things shifted. This is a long story. A couple things shifted, one of which was when I first went keto, I didn't get a lot of satiety from vegetables. So I could have a big salad and I'd still feel starving unless I put a lot of oil and vinegar and, mostly the oil and meat with it. And then I started to notice that I was actually feeling full if I included more vegetables. And I was like, well, that's interesting. It just felt like a shift. And then I wanted to do a cut, and I realized, because somehow I have won the metabolism lottery of being super efficient, super efficient. I will survive any famine very well.
Nice.
I'm prepared in many ways. And I was like, I started my cut, sort of the cut where I lost another 30, like the second big drop of weight. When I started that cut, I was doing it keto and realized I was starving. I couldn't eat enough food to be full and lose weight.
Right.
And this space in the middle was torturous. And I realized if I added a lot of voluminous vegetable food, I wasn't starving. And so it was the piece of the equation that allowed me to balance all of my needs, to not feel like I was going to kill somebody, that I was less often, only when they deserved it, not when they didn't, and be, maybe occasionally hungry, but not constantly hungry, and lose weight. And for me to line all those pieces up, I had to eat more carbs than I did when I was strictly keto. And I was still vaguely in ketosis at that level. Like I was, usually I'd be like 0.3
Right.
millimolar of ketones. So my insulin was clearly still very low in that state, but I was like, there's no, like, I want the outcome. I don't want to just cling to dogma. And so that kind of was the switch where I went more towards tracking protein and calories rather than tracking carbs primarily.
That's fascinating. I feel like I'm very much protein focused these days as well.
Yeah.
Like something happened recently. Like I've started working out. I'm trying to put on muscle, and I used to be, let me eat all the fat. Let me do the moderate protein, like everybody says, keep carbs low. And like people would say, you eat too much protein, it's going to, gluconeogenesis. You're going to like kick yourself out of ketosis. I'm like, I've had days where I have like almost 300 grams of protein, and I feel great. And I feel completely satiated. I don't feel at all bad. And I can't tell you the last time I checked my ketones. I don't really care.
Sometimes it's just curiosity. That's really honestly what it is. Yeah.
I mean, I loved I love the experience of wearing a CGM and messing around with all these different things. I ate like Sour Patch Kids one day just to see what it would do. And spoiler, not good. But, it's more about, like, I know what my goals are right now is to try to get better at lifting, something I've never been really good at. And that for me means eating more protein. And so that's kind of my focus these days. And I'm not so much concerned about what my pie chart looks like the classic keto pie chart. Some days it does. Some days it looks really different. Some days it looks like completely everything's equal. It's not something I concern myself with too much anymore. And so I've liked getting away from sort of the dogma of keto, and like the keto police say you can't eat that thing. I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't really care. So sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I'm in a unique position because I teach keto, but honestly, I look at it more that I want to help keto people, like people who identify as part of the keto community. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like we have to live in the dogma of it, but keto was the gateway for me to change my whole life. And it sounds like it was for you.
Absolutely.
And so like, I don't ever feel like it's not part of my identity, even though it might not be exactly the details at this time.
Right. I mean, keto is where I consider it like home base. Like that's where I go. Yeah. That's what I do. Carnivore as well. Like I've been mostly carnivore for the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. And that's where I feel best. That's where I'm most comfortable eating. But if I want to have, on date night, we're going out to tomorrow to a restaurant, and I don't have the faintest idea what I'm going to get. I'll probably get a steak, but there's probably going to be stuff before the steak that comes out that is decidedly not keto. And I'm not going to lose a whole lot of sleep over it. I would have, if I had that kind of meal in 2017, when I was trying to lose weight, it would have been like the sky is falling. I'm going to knock myself out of ketosis, and it's going to set me back weeks and weeks and weeks. But I'm kind of in a different place now, and that's not really what I'm focused on anymore. So I'm still figuring stuff out. Like I am the
You don't have it figured all out?
I don't think anyone who says they have it all figured out should be, do you? It's constantly learning stuff. Like I said, wearing a CGM was cool. And, doing all these experiments. I did a bunch of experiments with our friend John just to test like bioindividuality. We would eat the same things and see if there were any differences. He had major problems with a Quest pizza, I remember, that I did not. So, everyone says people are different, and they are. Like there are people who are more sensitive to carbs. There are people who, need to keep things super strict, and that's cool. I'm still figuring out exactly where I fall into that. I do like to keep things relatively strict, but there are days where I'm not going to be strict as well. That's sort of like finding a good balance. I think like maybe a couple times a month we'll have, I won't say we blow things out, but we have things that aren't keto. But the beauty of it is that I know that keto is where I feel so great that it's easy to sort of just get back on track the following day without another thing that I've tried to change over the last few years is not punishing myself after a day where I'm off track. I used to, I had a piece of cake at a birthday party. I'm going to fast for 96 hours now to sort of like, do the thing and get back on track. And that's not my deal anymore. It's just like, get back to normal. That's kind of in the past and gone, and there's nothing to be done about it now. That's kind of where the mindset is these days.
Have you had the experience of like making a choice or a planned deviation where you picked, like you were like, hey, I'm going to this party.
there's probably going to be cake. I'm okay having a slice of cake. You like take a bite of cake and you're like, not worth it. And you don't eat the cake.
Yeah. Exactly. That's pretty much word for word what has happened to me a couple of times. My niece turned 5 and I remember going and thinking, I'll have a piece of cake and take one for the team or whatever. And I had a piece and it was gross. I had a couple bites just to kind of appease my niece, but that was kind of it. I didn't have any desire really to have it. It wasn't like I was yearning for cake. It was just sort of like a social situation.
Is that the same? I don't know if it's the same for you, but that was unfathomable for me to stop eating the cake, even terrible cake, before I started keto.
Yeah. If there's food on your plate, you have to eat it. Like that's what you're told since the time you're a little kid, like clean your plate and you'll have dessert kind of thing. And that's another thing that I worked with when I worked with John is kind of intuitive eating. And it was the sort of thing where I would not track food during the day. I'd keep track of it, what I ate, but not track it in any sort of tracker. And then when I was done eating for the day, track everything and see how close I came to where I was supposed to be. And there were times when I had I can remember a specific example where I had 6 of these giant chorizo links in a bowl. I was just mindlessly eating them. And I stopped at, there were 2 left in there. And I was like, I don't feel like I'm hungry. I desperately want to eat these, but it's not because I'm hungry. It's because they're there. And so I kind of stopped and just set the bowl down for 10 minutes. And then I didn't really want to eat them anymore. And he was over the moon with that choice. He was like, that's it. You got it, I think. So it's sort of like eating because it's there versus fueling your body because it's just a mindset thing that I'm still grappling with sometimes. I still give myself probably way too much food on my plate and I tend to eat it because it's there. But I know that I can stop and think about what I actually should be eating versus what I want to, portion wise, I should say. So, I'm always experimenting and tweaking things.
I think, you had a similar change in your life. I think you started earlier, but I started working out this year and it sounds like you did too. When did that come in?
When I first got into keto and I saw these people on Instagram working out and doing the thing in the gym, I was like, I don't know. I guess I should get a gym membership and try to do that too. And I've always been averse to going to the gym. I just have this crazy anxiety, not knowing what to do on any machines. So I went a few times and I hung out on a treadmill and I watched people using the machines. And I gradually got a little bit better about exploring things on my own. Still kind of uncomfortable with a lot of it. And I went so far as to hire a personal trainer for a little while. I went to 4 or 5 sessions with this dude, powerlifting dude, total bro. Not really my kind of guy.
Okay.
But he taught me some stuff. And then COVID sort of happened and I stopped going to the gym. And I was like, okay, well, this is an excuse not to go to the gym. And I decided to buy my own weights to have in my basement and use them on my own. So that was last year, I think about this time last year. And I am so used to doing it now that I get up in the mornings and there are some days where I will sit down to work at 9 o'clock after having been up for a few hours. And I have trouble sometimes remembering if I worked out because it's become such a part of my routine that I'm just sort of mindlessly doing it. And I do really enjoy it now. I used to run a lot and I still like to run, but I'm more into lifting now. It's become a thing that I really enjoy. And I can feel myself getting stronger and better. And I see that my body is a little bit different. So it's cool. I want to continue with it and get stronger. And it's something I really like doing. And I know that you started working out too and have had similar sort of change in the way you think about lifting weights.
Yeah, I'm the same where I do know that I did it because I have to go somewhere. So I know I left the house, but it is just part of who I am now. I have been surprised many times that I'm working out. I should have been a professional excuse maker. I am so good at excuses, right? Excuses are us. Do you need an excuse? I will tell you what you should think. But yeah, I just go. I just do it. Yeah. And that's strange to me. But I think I wouldn't have gotten here without the experience of keto and practicing doing hard things, challenging things, transitioning from wanting to lose weight to wanting to be healthy, realizing, if I want to be healthy, I have to lift weights. It was a progression.
Yeah.
that I had to go on.
I think you hit on something there that I really identify with, this losing weight versus being healthy. Like that's a big thing to realize. And I think I realized that too. Like it wasn't about, I had this arbitrary number in my head. Like when I was starting keto, I was like, okay, I'm going to get down under 200 pounds. And that's the be all end all for me right now. I need to get that
tall.
number down there. I am a 6'3" person. So I started when I was about 285 pounds. And when I first lost the initial weight, I got down to about 215 and couldn't crack the 215 barrier. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. But now it's not about the number. People always say throw out your scale. And me in 2017 would be like, no, I need the scale to know where I am. And these days the scale is like, I am seeing numbers on the scale that are higher than they've been in like 4 years, but I know that number means something different than it did 5 years ago. The number now is like, I'm putting on muscle, and with that muscle comes a little bit of fat, obviously, but I think that I'm happy that the scale is where it is. I think this morning I stepped on it and it was 230 pounds, and I'm very comfortable there. Like I feel like 215 is where I'd like to be when I'm sort of lean, but this is the first time I've ever intentionally been in a calorie surplus ever. So it's a really weird thing to navigate, sort of eating more than I kind of want to, or feel like I should. And that sense of control that I have, like normally I can't imagine what my calories looked like when I was before.
Oh,
keto.
Sure. Right.
Like I never tracked
when you were
anything,
unintentionally in a calorie surplus.
I can imagine like into the thousands of calories over where I probably should have been, but it's different now. It's different. And doing this intentionally, I feel like is pretty empowering, and having a plan and sticking to the plan versus just blindly putting things in my face and putting healthy things in my face. It's not like I'm eating garbage. And even when I eat carbs, it's not junk. So it's a big difference. And I think I'm happy where I am. I think that had you told me in 2017 that in 5 years I would be weighing 230 pounds, I would have been like, oh man, what happened?
What did I do wrong?
But it's all good. I like feel better than I ever have, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, it's been a real mental challenge. I haven't done a bulk, right? Like that's not in my current goals, but I've certainly wanted to put on muscle. So I've been in maintenance calorically, or attempting to be hitting the moving target, right? Mm-hmm. Looking for a little bit of recomposition, praying to the newbie gains gods that they will bless me with, recomp rather than gain, but seeing the scale at times go up and really getting a good test of, putting my money where my mouth is around not placing my central self-worth about only seeing ever the scale go down.
Exactly. Yeah, you're more than that number, right. Like, how do you feel? Like, what is the overall trajectory? How are things looking in the long term? And that's another thing. Like, I used to be all about what's the scale say right now, but like, long term, I'm feeling great. This is sort of the way things are now. Yeah. It's not like a flash in the pan diet. When I started, I was like, oh, keto will just be another thing that I try for a few weeks and then give up. And then next January, I'll try something different. This is kind of the way it is. And I'm happy that it is. It definitely was life-changing. Oh, and I should say, not only has my wife gotten on board, my mom, through my friend and coach, the person, Samantha, who came up with that term, planned deviation, she's coaching my mom. And my mom is no longer pre-diabetic. She's lost a ton of weight in inches and has been doing better than ever. She's like 71 and is feeling better than she has in like a decade. So it's definitely life-changing. And I think I'm just pleased that people around me have seen sort of the benefits and taken advantage of it too. Yeah.
I think what I am proudest of I have no right to be proud of you. I mean, because I have nothing to do with your growth, but like when I look at your experience and my experience, and I feel there's a similarity, like living on the edge of teeter-totter diet, off the diet, on the diet, gain the weight, lose the weight, this endless treadmill of misery.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like we're that, like those aren't identities we can have anymore.
Right. And did you feel like it unlocked other things? Like when I got on keto and I lost the weight, I feel like so many other things in my life sort of clicked. Like work got better, keeping track of like finances got better. All these other things I kind of just said, well, whatever. Those things I really put a lot more thought into and kind of took control of those things as well.
I don't know what it is exactly, but I have a suspicion I am a hider. I don't know if you're a hider, but like, I think that some of my eating was just trying to hide from the world, like hide from my responsibilities. If I numb myself, like I didn't want to be a grown up in a lot of ways. Wow.
I think that I've never heard it articulated quite like that. That's definitely it for me. That was it for me too. Yeah. A lot of the issues I had stemmed from that for sure.
Because you could, if you had something come up and you didn't want to think about it, feel it, whatever, you could go through the drive-through, kind of chill out. And then I always had something to focus on about why my life wasn't working. It was because I was fat, not because I didn't keep a budget and I didn't talk to my boyfriend about problems. And there was an easy villain in my life.
Yeah.
That I could pin everything to, all the while ignoring all the other stuff that was just chaos.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah. So yes, it's gotten better in part because it's like, I felt like, it's like if you look in muddy water, you're like, I don't even know what's in there. It's just muddy. And then like the silt starts to settle and you're like, oh, look, I can see things now. I can see there's a fish over there. It's a weird
those
analogy.
Are my feet.
But yes, exactly.
I haven't seen those in a while.
Right. Yeah. So you get rid of the just clutter all over and you're like, oh, okay, well, I have been able to control myself in some ways. I could probably also do other hard things. And so, it's a big change.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like creatively things happened for me as well. Like I've always been in a sort of a creative field, but I started doing things for myself a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Like I put out this e-cookbook that I didn't think I would ever be able to do, which was almost a year ago now, but that was super fun. And that was another thing that sort of the pandemic afforded me, is kind of to do my own thing a little bit more than I had in the past. So that was fun. But I think it's definitely changed my life for the better without a doubt. And I don't see me ever, like I said, it's home base. I don't see me straying too far from it ever. I kind of feel the best when I'm keeping things low carb and keeping on track with that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. And it kind of comes around that you feel, you kind of look out in the world and when you see, even if you are eating low carb rather than keto or even just moderate carbs, I mean, you just, it's like once you see it, you can't unsee it. And sure, there's a occasional trip to Chipotle and an occasional birthday party, but I just can't imagine just every day being like, what horrendous processed food situation am I going to get into today?
That was the thing. Multiple times a week. I can tell you, like Friday nights are still kind of the nights where we relax a little bit. We watch something, we have like some low carb snack, but like back before we started keto, it was like, it's Friday night. I'm coming home with, a Taco Bell and like a suitcase size thing of Sour Patch Kids. And we're going to like hammer them all night and be close to a diabetic coma by the time we go to bed. Like every week it was, should we put another DiGiorno in the oven kind of thing?
Yeah.
And those days are long gone, and it's good. It's good that those days are long gone.
It's very good. Well, this has been so good to get caught up. Is there anything you want people to know before we close?
Is there anything I want people to know? Sure. Well, first I got to ask you, are you going to be at Ketocon this year? As we record, it's like a month before.
Yeah, I'm not going to Ketocon. But I will be doing several other things. I'm speaking at Keto Orlando.
Oh, nice.
In August. I'm speaking at Dr. Berry's Summit in September. And so I will be traveling around still, but I decided to skip KetoCon just in terms of my life and how it was going to work.
Understood. Yeah, Ketocon is the one that it's the one that a bunch of my friends are going to.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. It's, as of this recording, it's about a month away. I'm very excited because our friend, Chef Michael Silverstein, just announced this party that he's going to be having on, I think, the Saturday that we're there. So I would encourage people to go check out Chef Michael's website.
Is it something that is open for people to attend?
It is. It's actually, there are tickets to it, but the entirety of the ticket price, which I think is $30, goes to Texas LGBTQ organizations entirely. So it's not like, the big thing he told me was that he didn't want it to be this big corporate thing. He wanted to have a party for the people who wanted to go, but keeping it open-ended would have probably gotten out of hand. So this is a way to kind of like, you get a ticket, but like all the money is going directly to something worthwhile. So that's super cool. But I'll be there sharing a place with John, our friend, the Keto Road, as well as Gormy, my friend Chella, my friend Amy. We're going to be very close to Palmer Events Center this year. I'm very excited. We're like 2 blocks away, 8 minutes to the Starbucks. But yeah, if people want to find me, they can do it on Instagram. My handle is AD Keto, A.D. Keto. I'm on YouTube at High Fat, High Fun. And that's pretty much it. The keto stuff is kind of, social media stuff is sort of, the YouTube stuff in general has slowed down. I used to put out a lot of stuff on my keto channel. That has kind of slowed down as my kids have gotten to be a little bit older. We're dealing with a lot of, learning to drive, going to college, all of this kind of stuff. Life has sort of like taken the front seat.
Maybe in a few years when they're all settled in college, it'll become a focus again.
Hopefully, once they're completely out of the house. Because I have a guy taking a gap year this year. I have another guy who's going to be looking for work. They're living here in our tiny house. So we'll get them out and then maybe get back into things a little bit more regularly. But yeah, those are where you can find me. And I can't thank you enough for having me on. I love your podcast and I'm honored to be on it. And I'm bummed that you won't be at Ketocon, but I'm looking forward to hearing about
I'm probably going to get FOMO and like the end of the month, be like, all right, I'll come. But like, I'm trying to limit the events to a smaller number this year, sort of the post-COVID sanity retention.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I think that a lot of people are feeling that. And I had reservations initially about, like, I wanted to go to Ketocon in 2020. Like when the pandemic hit, I was like, oh, plane tickets are going to be super cheap. And my wife was like, are you fucking insane? Like, what are you even thinking? No. So it's good. It's going to be good to like get back with people after a few years and see people IRL that I haven't for a while. So looking forward to that. And then I don't know what the plan is for the rest of the year. I might try working on another cookbook. That's another thing I'll plug is my PDF cookbook.
We'll put a link.
It's called Keto Crossover Hits. It's got recipes that people on keto will like. And if you have a mixed diet household like I do, there are things like every recipe is kind of for both keto people, non-keto people. And each recipe has an attached unlisted YouTube video to follow along with. So it's super feature rich, as they say.
Oh, look at you. That's a very smart idea.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I have one every now and then.
Cool. Okay. Well, it was super fun to have you. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you in person, if not at KetoCon, then somewhere.
Thank you, Kim. It's always so much fun talking to you. We'll talk to you later.
Too. Talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon.